So good evening, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us on this Study in the Netherlands webinar. Hopefully you're going to get answers to all of your questions about studying at Dutch universities. Now, before I get stuck into this evening's presentation, I would just like to introduce you to the two other faces you can see on your screen. We are joined by, first of all, Noortje de Koort from Avans University of Applied Sciences and Georgia Spano from Harlem Campus. You will learn a little bit more about who they are and what they have to offer during the presentation and then afterwards in the Q&A. But without further ado, I am now going to try and share my screen. I say try because we've had a few technical issues already with this, but hopefully you can all see the screen. Yeah, could you nod to confirm? Good. All right, thank you very much. So what I'd like to do now is just very quickly deliver a presentation about studying in the Netherlands in English. Who are we to do this? Well, we are an organization that basically focuses on UK students first and foremost, but we do also work with students all around the world, and we're trying to encourage you to think a little bit further afield in terms of your educational choices. In recent years, Dutch universities have been very, very popular for a number of reasons. I think I will leave you in no doubt as to what those are throughout this presentation, so I won't elaborate on them right now. I'll just jump into why it is we think you should go and study in Holland. Now, the first reason I would give is, well, basically because students like it. There is no point trying to convince you to do something that is completely alien and you don't want to do. British students do seem to adapt to life in the Netherlands very, very well. It is a very safe, nearby country. And also English is very widely spoken, which to my opinion is a little bit of a drawback. But I do understand that you want to be somewhere where you are never going to feel isolated if you speak the English language, and the Netherlands can offer you exactly that. I've put up here on this slide two quotes from British students who've recently completed their degrees in the Netherlands, talking about what they got out of the experience. The first one is Karen at the top there, saying, "I was the shyest, least confident girl ever, and I've grown so much and become someone I really do not feel like I would have if I'd stayed in England, stayed at home." So for her, going to the Netherlands really was a transformational experience, enabled her to come out of her shell a little bit, perhaps. Adine actually talks about something more specific to the environment of studying at an international university. And this is definitely true of Dutch universities, and you will get a very strong sense of this throughout this presentation, I think, is that if you go and study in the Netherlands, you're going to meet students from all around the world. Dutch universities have become increasingly international in the last few years. This is partly because of the increased number of courses taught in English, but also because of the, very welcoming opening society and good job prospects for after you graduate. And Adine focuses very much on this, the benefit of meeting people from different cultures and understanding and embracing them. It really can be an eye-opener and, will give you a radically different experience than you would get from studying in your home country, because you won't just be surrounded by one nationality. So hopefully that gives you a sense as to why you should just get out of your home country and go to the Netherlands in particular. What I'd like to do now is just briefly give you a bit of an overview of the education system there, because the chances are it's very different from what you are used to. It's certainly not exactly the same as you will find in the UK. In general terms, and you will often hear this description, the Dutch have a binary system of education, which basically means two types of universities. But that is an increasingly simplistic way of looking at it. Actually, there are two basic strands to higher education in the Netherlands, but within those, there are all sorts of different institutions. Now, the ones that I'm going to talk about first are the research universities. These are, if you like, the ones that are equivalent to our Russell Group universities, if you want to see things that way. These do also include the university colleges that you might have come across in the Netherlands, although they do not appear in their own name in the World University Rankings. This here is a snapshot that we have developed ourselves. You won't find this listed anywhere else, but this is actually a slide which originates from, or the original data comes from the Times Higher Education World University Rankings. What we have done here is focus only on those universities in continental Europe. So we stripped out the USA, the UK, Asia, and places like that. And furthermore, we've stripped out universities in continental Europe that don't offer any bachelor's degrees in English, because knowing that they teach or knowing that they are excellent is great, but unless you speak the local language, there's no way you're ever going to get in. So what this slide actually shows you is those universities in the top 50 in continental Europe that teach something, anything in English. And you can see quite clearly that one country dominates, both in terms of the number of institutions there. You can see the Netherlands. There are 12 research universities in the Netherlands, and you've got the names of 10 of them here on this slide. And if you add up the number of bachelor's degrees that they offer in English, I haven't actually done it recently, but I do know that roughly 75% of all the opportunities at all the universities in the top 50 in Europe are available to you in English at Dutch universities, and others only ever have a handful of degrees in comparison with what you can find in the Netherlands. So this is part of the reason why Dutch research universities in particular have been extremely popular with British students in recent years, and now also increasingly with European students who might previously have naturally considered the United Kingdom to be their preferred destination in Europe, let's put it that way. There are reasons for that we're going to elaborate a little bit further on. Now, when it comes to doing your research into which is the right research university for you to go to, what I would actually encourage you to do is to take advantage of opportunities to find as much information about universities as you can. Now, clearly going on open days will help you with this, but this is actually an initiative from the University of Groningen where they offer web classes twice a year in March and November. Any of you in year 12 right now, I would advocate that you sign up for this in November, because it gives you the chance, free of charge, to study something at the university remotely. Yes, it is real study. Yes, it takes hours of your life for 4 weeks, but you will get an assignment. If you hand those assignments in, you will get personal feedback on those assignments, and that will give you an indication of what it's actually like to study at a research university. So if you're in any doubt about that, I think this is a great way to reassure yourself. But that is only one side of the story. And while the research universities have seen massive growth in terms of the number of international students doing bachelor's degrees there in recent years, actually, for a longer period of time, it has been the universities of applied sciences that have been teaching in English. And because I've invited two guests here tonight, I'm not going to talk about the universities of applied sciences too much. I'm actually going to invite Noortje to talk a little bit about Avans University of Applied Sciences.
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much for the introduction, and welcome once again. My name is Nora and I'm working at Avans University of Applied Sciences, which is one of the types of universities that you will come across in what Mark calls the binary system. And here you're looking at one of our campuses in the south of the Netherlands, in the city of Breda, to be more specifically. But we are based in a few other places as well, which I will come to show in a little bit. But a few good reasons to consider studying at a University of Applied Sciences is for those students that really like to engage in the program that they are studying. It has a very practical approach. So of course you will study stuff from the books, but you learn how to apply it on real cases straight away. So from the get-go, you learn how to apply the theories and the models that are relevant to your field of study in real projects. Not only you do this within the university by doing projects with your fellow students, but you also have the opportunity to gain some work experience while you're still a student via graduation internships, minor programs, and regular internships in companies. A lot of the lectures within the study programs, they are still tied to the professional field, or they have ample experience that they bring into the classroom. So your study materials and the examples that we work with are largely based on real life cases. Further to that, we are a big institution, but we aim to have small classes where you have a lot of personal contact with your fellow students, but also with your lecturers. Mark already pointed out the world rankings briefly. However, there's also a national ranking for all the universities of applied sciences here in the Netherlands. And we are proud to have been named the best large university of applied sciences in the Netherlands for the past 10 years. And this is especially relevant because the ranking committee does not only look at the facilities and the study programs, but also takes into consideration the feedback of our students, our graduates, and even the employers that hire our students. Looking at the city campuses, as I said in the beginning, we are based in Breda, but also in 's-Hertogenbosch, which is another city in the south of the Netherlands. We have 2 more campus cities. However, for the international students that are coming to study at Avans, you will end up in one of those 2 study programs. We have a small but close-knit international community of students making up for 80 different student nationalities. So you will be part of a very diverse and international community from the beginning of your studies all the way through. There's room to get some international experience while you're in one of our study programs as well by doing exchange programs or internships abroad. So you have a lot of options to create a curriculum that fits your interests and your needs. Well, a few good reasons to close off why to consider Avans. As I said, we have been named the #1 University of Applied Sciences for the past 10 years. We offer challenging extracurricular activities for those in need of an additional challenge, and studying at an applied sciences university really prepares you for the professional field, which is proved by the 92% of Avans alumni that find a job within 3 months after graduation. So that's definitely something that kickstarts your career, whether it's in the Netherlands or internationally. To close off, if you're interested in studying at Avans, you can come across 5 international bachelor degree programs that we have on offer. One is in environmental science for sustainable energy and technology. This program has its origin in natural sciences, but you learn how to apply it on environmental issues. So this really is a program for students that are keen on preserving the planet for future generations. We have a program in industrial engineering and management for those students that like to combine the engineering part with the managerial part. And of course, a wide array of business programs if you want to pursue either a career in international finance or international business.
Thank you very much, Noortje, for that guide to what the Universities of Applied Sciences have to offer, and also to, a little bit of an introduction to Avans. And I'm sure she'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about that specific university, and again, about the sector as a whole, when we come to the Q&A later. But what Noortje just presented to you was an example of one of the, if you like, traditional HBO, Universities of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. But these are not the only options that you have available right now. The growth of English taught higher education in the Netherlands has actually given rise to some new types or new institutions as well. And in a moment, Georgia is going to introduce one of those to you. But I should just say, I did visit Harlem Campus that you're about to hear about just 1 month ago. It's the first time I've ever been to visit a university that's in a former prison, former army barracks, or former cinemas, or all sorts of other things I've seen. But this was a new one on me. So Georgia, you might want to explain to us why it is there is now a university where a prison used to be.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Georgia, and I'm here to tell you about Harlem Campus. We're brand new, so the building is brand new, but it has a big history. This used to be a prison, as Mark said, and you can see that there's a lot of work done to the building, and now it's a university and rather a business hub. Because as you see the building, I'm just going to explain this, and then it's going to give you an indication of how we work, our education works. The left side, imagine it like a cake, right? So the left side is the university classes, and the right side are the companies which we partner with in order for us to provide you guys with real case studies, so then you can really work. And it's all what University of Applied Science is, applying the science. So in the morning, 9 to 12, you have classes, theory, and then from 12 to 5, you just get linked to all these companies from so many different industries to be able to practice the theory that you learned. Yeah, we're looking for students of mixed backgrounds. Why is that? Well, research has shown that those environments that they're able to bring different perspectives, different culture, different points of view, you become more creative, and also you're able to not only grow as a professional, but also personally, which is a very important part of development for us. And that's why we also provide a mentor. We have a little bit of a different way of educating because we want to have very small classes. We don't want to exceed 30 students per classroom, and we want to link every single student with a mentor. We don't want you to be a number. We want to really see you and want to really help you with your network and your development. These are our programs. So we have first one, creative media. This is the more fun program that we have. Is usually for people who already are creating something in their own personal time. It can be filming, it could be photography, it could be writing. Actually, in the campus, we have one of the biggest Dutch media companies called RNW Media, and you're going to be linked with them to do most of your projects together and explore what you're good at. You could be creative, but you can then understand what media you're interested in and what form of creativity you're interested in. Business psychology, this is it has the greatest demand right now. It's combining two different popular studies right now. Business, which is a bit of a security blanket, because then if you have studied something in business, you can open so many different doors in so many different industries. And psychology is something that has becoming more and more popular, as we all know, since we're aware of mental health care. And this is, you have three different streams that you can use this bachelor for. One, it could be change management. So you learn how to establish change in a business step by step. The other door you can open, it's along with HR and recruitment. Who do we hire? Why do we hire them? And how do they fit the ambition and plan of the business? And then you also have brand and marketing, where you can specialize on UX, or you can specialize on how to target the markets that you want to target. Digital transformation management is a bit more technical, but it's rather the bridge between the IT department and the business, because a lot of times management is worried about budget and they're worried about the growth of the business, where IT is more concentrated on how efficient the technology that is implemented within the business is. So then if you have knowledge for both, you're able to facilitate the growth of the business from both sides. Therefore, this is for those who want to be a consultant but have a direction, so you can have a direction of emerging technologies. Can we have the next slide? Okay. All right. And we also have a tryout semester. The slide, when we're making it with Mark, everything moves, so excuse the appearance, but it's for those who want to try out our educational concept for 90 days. And that way you can be under a tourist visa. You don't need a study visa, because you're able to be in the Netherlands for 90 days under a tourist visa. And then you can join the first semester, see if you like it. And then if you do, you can convert to a student. That way you don't make the actual commitment of staying for all 4 years, and you can try out our education first. Learning on demand, yeah, not really. We're more flexible with that. We just want to have continuous performance feedback with you. You also collect feedback from the companies you have case studies with, and we don't have exams. So that means we don't have sitting down exams. You are not ever going to be handed a book where you need to learn by heart and then you need to take multiple questions. We just have assignments, and those assignments are reviewed by your lecturers and the businesses.
Right, well, thank you very much, Georgia. Obviously, again, we will refer back to you at a couple of points later on in this presentation, and you will be around for questions at the end as well. But you've heard about two different approaches, essentially, these binary approaches, one of which is more theoretical, sitting in a library, writing essays, going to lectures, and one of which is much more getting your hands dirty. Now, obviously, a lot of people sort of try to think, well, you know, there's a certain kind of university that's going to be right for me or not. But in actual fact, this choice for you in the Netherlands is often made by your choice of subject. So, you know, certain things are going to be offered at research universities, certain things at universities of applied sciences. There is very little crossover. There's more than there used to be, but some things are very clearly either belong in the research universities or belong in the applied sciences. So for example, if you're wanting to study philosophy, history of art, medicine, biology, economics, it's going to have to be a research university. If you want to study hotel management, ICT, logistics management, physiotherapy, art and design, it's going to have to be a University of Applied Science. So automatically your subject has made the decision for you which type of institution you can go to. The other thing that's probably going to determine which type of institution you go to is your prior education. There are essentially different entry requirements for universities of applied sciences and for research universities. But I'm going to revisit that point in a moment, so I don't want to dwell on it right now. There are some subjects, however, where the lines become a little bit blurred. You will find business and engineering degrees in both places like Avans, as Noortje pointed out, and also in the University of Amsterdam, Delft University of Technology, for example. And here you will find that although the name of the degree might be similar, they will have a very, very different approach. And here the applied sciences will obviously be that bit more practical, and the research universities will naturally enough be a little bit more research based. So a different style. So I think that is the most important thing to think about, rather than this university is ranked here and that university is ranked there, and therefore this is the right or the wrong choice for you. So you do need to be a little bit aware of this, because sometimes it stops people from making the right decision. Now, another way to put the same divide into different words, I've put up here two quotes from interviews we conducted with British students who went to the Netherlands in recent years, because it does rather illustrate the difference. Joey here at the top, he completed his bachelor's degree in physics at the University of Groningen, and he said what surprised me most was the amount of study early on. In the UK, I feel you don't have to do much at all in the first year, but here it is the most important. Here, what he's talking about is the fact that if you go to a research university in the Netherlands, you are going to be expected to hit the ground running. And the exams you take in the first year have real consequences. The more you delve into Dutch higher education, the more you're going to see things like binding study advice. And binding study advice is one of those classic examples of Dutch words translated into English to become almost meaningless. It is binding, it is not advice. Basically, if you receive binding study advice, you've just been thrown out. Okay, so you need to make sure that you meet the standard required, and that does require intense study. So even though some people look at the entry requirements and think these are rather modest, you know, you're not looking at easy places. And then Lucy here, she gives a different example. She completed a physiotherapy degree a couple of years back, and she's talking about her experience at one of the universities of applied sciences. She said it's a very practical based teaching style. My older sister studied physiotherapy in the UK and envies that her course didn't offer what my university does. And what she got that her sister didn't was real hands-on practical experience dealing with patients from the very first year. So really practical experience is at the heart of every University of Applied Science degree, whether that's business, art and design, creative media, ICT, you name it. And that, to be honest, is what a lot of people want from their university experience, because that will open doors for you into a career early on, let's put it that way. So hopefully now that's explained a little bit about the difference in the institutions that you have in the Netherlands. The rest of this presentation is going to be given over to some of the practical considerations that I know you will have, and these are really important things for you to understand. Now, the first one, I did briefly touch on this before, entry requirements. Now, these have changed in recent years for students with A-levels. They have gotten tougher, but when you read them, you're going to think they are still rather easy. Now, there are some exceptions to this, which we will come back to in a moment. But generally speaking, for nearly every bachelor's degree at a research university, the entry requirements are 3 A-levels at CCC or better, 24 on the International Baccalaureate. You will also need to have GCSEs to make up at least 6 different subjects. This is what is seen as being equivalent to the Dutch VWO school diploma. And if you have something that's equivalent to that, you are entitled to a place at university, unless there are selection processes and restrictions. The restrictions are likely to be in terms of the subjects that you have studied. Sometimes maths is going to be required. That will be true for any scientific subject. Also for things like business it is required as well, and economics. Some subjects are, however, subject to additional requirements, which means CCC is still the entry requirement, but you will have to also go through a selection process. These degrees include medicine, psychology, international relations, business, computing science, artificial intelligence. Expect this list to grow. I would be very surprised if it doesn't include law and economics very, very quickly, and probably some other subjects as well. But I'm going to come on to that a little bit later in the context of changes we're expecting to see in the next couple of years. The University of Applied Sciences are actually a lot easier to get into. 2 A-levels plus 4, well, I'll put IGCSEs, but GCSEs or IGCSEs at A star to C, or basically grades 9 to 5. This isn't actually true. AS levels would be good enough, but as nobody does AS levels in the UK, I didn't want to confuse you by putting those in there. The reason for that is because the Netherlands has 2 different school systems, one of which takes 12 years to complete and then naturally leads to an applied science degree, one of which takes 13 years to complete and naturally leads to a research university, which is the reason why research universities degrees are typically 3 years and applied sciences ones are 4-year. Sometimes if you do have 3 A-levels at CCC or better, you can actually go into an applied science university in the 2nd year and do what's called a fast track. That exists some places, but not everywhere. Now, in the universities of applied sciences, subjects tend to be, well, as a whole, let's say, less selective than they are at the research universities, but there are some exceptions there as well. Physiotherapy, you are going to have to go through a selection process in addition to meeting these entry requirements, and art and design schools, quite clearly things like portfolio are going to come into play there as well, and that will be an additional requirement over simply those grades that you need to get in. But for the longest time, people have been looking at the Netherlands thinking it's incredibly easy to get in. And that has sometimes led people to a false conclusion that Dutch education mightn't be as good as it actually is. So I'm quite glad that the entry requirements are getting harder. I won't lie to you, but I don't think that they are that difficult. I mean, certainly in the context of British universities, you are not going to find these grades frightening, I don't think. How do you actually go about applying then? This is different, but also has some similarities as well. The one thing I should say is that any of you here from the UK, or any of you who are looking at British universities, you're probably already familiar with UCAS. You don't use UCAS to apply to Dutch universities, obviously. You do, however, use something called StudyLink, which is the Dutch Central Applications Organization. But please don't expect it to behave the same way as UCAS. You will only get frustrated. Customer service from StudyLink, well, let's put it this way, they could learn an awful lot from UCAS. UCAS is many, many times better in my opinion. Let's put it that way. But it does serve a sort of administrative process. It's there to make sure you are properly registered to get into a university. It doesn't really do an awful lot more than that. Now, within StudyLink, you will have the option to apply to 4 universities. That might not be immediately obvious to you because you typically have to complete your first application before it tells you, would you like to apply somewhere else? So if you're getting into it and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've only got one choice. No, you've always got 4. You will always have that. But if you're applying to these selective subjects that I mentioned earlier, things like physiotherapy, psychology, international relations, you can only apply to 2 options in those subjects. You can use your other 2 choices for something else, but you can only apply to 2 selective subjects. And indeed for medicine, that falls to 1. In terms of when the deadlines are, 15th of January is the deadline. Well, you might be familiar with it as a UCAS deadline as well, but coincidentally, it's also a deadline for the selective universities. If you are applying for one of these selective programs, you need to submit your application before that date. If you meet the general entry requirements, you will be invited to take part in the selection process. If you are successful in the selection process, you will find out if you've got a place. It's always on the 15th of April, even when the 15th of April was Good Friday, like it was this year, which meant, loads of people asking me questions over Easter weekend. That wasn't particularly, helpful, but that's just the way it is. It's always the 15th of April. For the research universities, if you are applying with an EU passport, the deadline is the 1st of May. but if you're not, it's actually the 1st of April ordinarily. And for the Universities of Applied Sciences, you can actually apply slightly later with an EU passport up to the 1st of August. And not sure the application deadline for those with a non-EU passport, 1st of August, or is it earlier?
1st of June for non-EU.
Okay, thank you. I just realized I'd forgotten that as I was speaking. And I should also point out that while there are 2 semester starts in the Netherlands in September or in February, there are very, very few places that start in February. Georgia is one of them, so I don't know if that's why you've raised your hands, but please contribute now.
I just want to mention that from our side, because we're private education, we, first of all, our deadline for non-Europeans, it is the 1st of August. And yeah, of course, we also have a February intake, and we don't go via study link. We go through our own platform. It's called Dream Apply, where applications are being processed on the same day. And it's a more of a direct link to your email, and there is customer service. Just so, yeah.
But Georgia, that technically that means that if they apply to Harlem Campus, they've then got 5 choices, yeah, effectively.
Well, they have all the SRH locations, because we have partner universities, so they can apply for all SRH locations, the biggest private university in Germany, and all of our courses, which are 3. So they can have as many choices as they wish to. And then we go to an interview intake where I give study advice, and based on your personality and your dreams, we define which one fits you best.
Okay, so again, private usually does mean a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more insight. I do know that some of the public universities of applied sciences do also interview every applicant as well. I believe Rotterdam Business School does that. I don't think you do at Avans though, do you, Noortje? So you're muted.
Yeah, we do interview the students.
You do interview everybody, but that's more just a study matching process rather than a selection process as such, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so that's just to make sure you've thought about what you're doing and you've ended up in the right place. I don't know of any of the research universities that do that unless it is a formal part of a selective process. Anyway, moving on now. The next thing I really need to address is money. This is one area that's been massively impacted by Brexit, if you happen to have a British passport. So this is going to take me a few goes to explain correctly for everybody. I'm going to start for those of you who have no EU passport whatsoever, which means if you are British or from outside of the European Union in other directions. How much is it going to cost you? Well, not a lot by UK standards, but more than it might do with an EU passport, let's put it that way. Fees are typically between around 7,500 and 14,000 euros. 7,500 euros would be for some of the degrees at universities of applied sciences. Noortje, would that correspond with what you charge at Avans, would you say, or is it a little higher now?
At Avans, we charge around 8,400 per year for non-EU and 2,200 for the regular ones.
Right, we'll come on to the regular ones in a moment. I don't want to mix this, it gets confusing, but 7,500, well, 8,400, as Noortje pointed out there, that would be typical for a degree at a University of Applied Sciences. For a research university degree in arts and humanities, maybe 12,000. Science and engineering, I think, is about 14 and 15,000. Medicine is 32,000 at the moment. So medicine is massively high, but you know, all the others are manageable. The bigger issue is that you're not going to get loans to go and study there. Scholarships, such as they exist at Dutch universities, there is something called the Holland Scholarship, but most universities that have that use it to subsidize their master's students rather than their bachelor's students. So you're unlikely to get it for a bachelor's degree, more likely, but not guaranteed to get it for a master's degree. That means that a sensible budget for you to go and study somewhere like Avans or would be somewhere around 17,000 euros a year. For somewhere like a research university, probably closer to 25,000 euros a year. Now, by global standards, that is relatively affordable, but it's not nothing. So you just need to be aware that you're probably going to have to look at this for yourself. Now, coming on to those of you who happen to have an EU passport, Noortje will already give you a bit of a clue as to what your fees will be. 2,209 euros this year. Do you know what they'll be next year, Noortje? Is that agreed yet? No. They usually go up by inflation, which means in recent years it's gone up by a little bit, but inflation is no longer small. So let's see what happens next. But it's not going to be a massive hike. That's for sure. Now, the main advantage of this is that, yes, your fees are a lot lower, but you can also borrow money from the Dutch government if you have an EU passport to cover your tuition costs. You cannot borrow money for your living costs, except in some circumstances that I'm not really going to dwell on right now that involve working part-time while you were there as a student. It's difficult to meet all of the requirements for that, but sometimes you will get them. If you have a Dutch passport, you'll get the maintenance loans automatically anyway. But this does mean that because the fees are lower and because you're getting a tuition fee loan, you can probably afford to study there by finding around 10,000 a year from your own resources. And certainly if you're comparing that with the costs in the UK or elsewhere, I would say that's very, very favourable indeed. So obviously having an EU passport is a good thing. Now, that's the situation for the public universities. For the private universities, it is a little bit different. Georgia, could you just explain what your fee levels are, please?
Of course. So we are at 9,900 euros per year. And of course, we have the convenience of having accommodation next to us. Therefore, you decline a little bit in transportation costs. And then we have a 450 euro fee for the visa application. And yeah, we can do a deposit. So there's different ways that we can work around the price. And of course, since year two, you can pay in installments.
Okay. And it's true, therefore, that, you know, if you look at the non-EU fees, as Nortje just pointed out, 8,400 versus 9,900, that's kind of, well, it's a little bit of a difference, let's be honest. You know, it's not a significant one between public and private. But for the EU students, you are maybe 3 times the cost, but students can still get a loan to pay for all that. So it still means that the overall outlay, if you like, is going to be around 10,000 euro a year, give or take, depending on accommodation, travel, and all the rest of it. So public and private, it's good for you. You know, it's not a completely different ballpark financially. Let's put it that way. Now I want to move on from money, because the next part of this presentation is really geared towards live issues in Dutch higher education right now. And there's no way in the world that we could do a presentation about studying in the Netherlands without mentioning this: accommodation. What I've put up here on this slide is something from a Dutch news website last week, basically saying for the students looking to start this September, don't come unless you have a place to live. This is because the biggest issue there is in the Netherlands right now is around student housing. Why has this happened? Well, partly it's structural, because they don't have nearly as much student housing as we do in the UK and other countries might have, but also because the number of international students in particular going to Dutch universities has gone through the roof. 25% of all students at Dutch universities now are international students, and there are many, many more than there used to be. Why is that? There are several different reasons. Dutch universities will probably tell you it's because they are excellent. Yeah, but they've always been excellent. What has really changed in the last year or so is Brexit. Yep, that's made things tougher for British students to study in Europe, but it's made it immeasurably tougher for European students to study in the UK. They are now looking for places to study in English. Where can you find them? The Netherlands. So the number of EU students going to Dutch universities has really exploded in the last couple of years, which is a good thing and a bad thing. And the worst implication is for housing. Places like Amsterdam now, they are expecting, on current projections, around 5,000 people who currently have offers from their universities to not find accommodation, which, you know, the reason for articles like this is the universities kind of want you to, you know, just be realistic. So what I would say is, based on this, if you're thinking about this for 2023, I don't want to give you the impression that you shouldn't try. Of course not. If this is what you want to do, absolutely go for it. But when it comes to deadlines and things like that, take it tremendously seriously. Apply as early as you possibly can. Make sure that you have an offer letter from the university before the university housing officers open their lists, which is usually in the first week of May. So not ridiculously early, but make sure you are ready to go 1st of May and take this tremendously seriously. So when we're talking about deadlines that might be in August or whatever, honestly, the real deadline is housing, not what it says in StudyLink. So please, please, please take this seriously. I do believe that the pressure will ease in a couple of years' time as more private housing becomes available, as more initiatives become available. And I know Georgia will want to say something about this. We'll get to her in a second. But, you know, housing is definitely a live issue. Noortje, could you just sum up what's going on in Breda and in Den Bosch at the moment around housing? What are you telling your current applicants?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it is in line with the same message that we're seeing here in the headlines. We are one of the smaller student cities, and in the past years, for us, it would be easier to accommodate students compared to the big cities such as Amsterdam and Rotterdam and The Hague. But indeed, like Mark mentioned, with the exponential growth of new international students coming to the Netherlands, even in the smaller cities, you would see a lot of pressure on the housing market. We do, however, have a number of rooms available for new incoming international students, but I must be honest, it's always less rooms than new incoming students, and we allocate them on a first come, first served basis. So again, to stand with, you know, what Mark is saying, take it serious, put in your application and show your interest in renting accommodation via the university as early as possible, because this gives you the best opportunity to be able to secure a spot and don't have to worry about it before, you know, the final weeks of summer being over.
Okay. So what that means is basically, I think Noortje's just explained why what I'm about to tell you is true. If you are thinking that applying to a Dutch university is your plan B, like, oh, I'm going to apply in Ireland, I'm going to apply in the Netherlands or in the UK or America or whatever, and if that doesn't work out on results day, I'm going to decide to go to a Dutch university and I'm not going to make any plans around housing until I get my results through. Yeah, just don't bother. It's not sensible. Okay. But talking about ways of resolving the housing situation, most universities are not able to own their own accommodation. That's just the law. Some, however, are. Georgia, what are you doing to help your students?
Yes, we're here to give solutions. No, we're very happy about it, to be honest, because that was one of the first things when we're designing this university, one of our troubles. And we're like, okay, we want to bring new students in, but where are we going to put them? So because this used to be a prison, there used to be a department next to the prison, which was for people that were not in prison yet. And those were perfect spaces for apartments. And what we did was that we renovated them and we made them into studio apartments for single people. So that means not single in terms of status, but more, you don't have a roommate, you have your own spaces. It's fully furnished. And it's a very good price for the neighborhoods. And being 1 minute literally from your classroom, you don't get distractions about your studies. You can really focus. I'm not from the Netherlands. I came here as a student, so I do have a lot of experience of how it feels like to be kicked out every single place I was going to. And it's very distracting because usually when you need to find new accommodation is your exam period and it really crushes you. But this way you're able to keep it for 4 years and you're able to just concentrate on your studies and building your social life here.
And Georgia, what is the price you would charge per month for one of these single rooms?
So all inclusive and fully furnished, it is at 840 euros per month. And the deposit is just plus one rent. So that would be like the first 2 rents.
Okay. And if you don't know where Haarlem is, anybody, it's literally 20 minutes from the center of Amsterdam on the train, 30 minutes on the bus from Schiphol Airport. So it's totally connected. And Haarlem is not a massively student-y city. It will become more so, I think, over the coming decade. But it's a perfectly, I mean, I've only been there for the first time in my life a month ago. It's a perfectly pleasant place to live. And it's basically, to all intents and purposes, part of Amsterdam, I would say.
And it's 20 minutes from the beach. That's also good to know.
In the other direction. I didn't quite get there. The weather wasn't supporting that. Let's put it. And another live issue that I do just want to address is this one. We've explained today the way things are, but you are going to be applying to university in 2023 and later. Things might change. There is a lot of noise in the Netherlands around restricting the number of international students coming to the country. This is, again, not because they don't like international students. As it says very clearly here, international talent is essential. Dutch universities recognize this, but the issues they are facing is that the needs of the Dutch economy, if you like, are not always being met by the kinds of international students they are getting, not because they're bad people or something like that, but because the subjects are not high priority. You know, places like the Technical University of Eindhoven, which is all about computing science and so on, they want to actually double their numbers. But those degrees that are more in the arts and humanities, maybe less so. So I would actually anticipate that degrees in things like English literature, history of art, history itself, might become harder to find in English in future years. But for the time being, they do still exist. Please apply. You know, like I said before, I'm not trying to put you off. I'm trying to make sure you understand a little bit about the background of what's going on in the Netherlands right now. So there could be a limit on student numbers in English language courses, which basically means every subject will go to numerus fixus and the selection process I moved before. It could be that non-EU students are restricted, but others are not, which will be tremendously bad news for Brits if it does happen. And it could be that they just allow things to carry on, but you know, once they get to a cutoff point, they just have to apply the brake. But this is part of the reason why the Netherlands is in the situation it is right now, is because it doesn't have an off switch, if you like, when it comes to the numbers of students going there, and it needs one. So I think things are going to change. I think inevitably this is going to make it harder, but I don't think it's going to make it impossible. And I would definitely still advise you to consider going to study there, because I think even with these kind of structural issues, you know, if that's what you want, it is a phenomenal place to be a student. The people who sent there over the last decade or so have all absolutely loved their time at Dutch universities. So I think I would encourage you to look at it and to go through with it. Now, to find more information, we do have a website, A Star Future, that covers the whole of the world, if you like, mostly Europe, let's be honest. We do also have our Study in Holland website. I do also have the address up there of our Spanish website, because we're getting loads of interest from Spanish students this year as well. You're welcome to make a note of my email address, and Twitter, Instagram's exactly the same, and follow us on any of those. But I appreciate if you do have questions. We are all here tonight, so let's try and answer them for you as we go. Now, appreciate I haven't had a chance to look at them, and if there are any in the chat, please do put them in a Q&A as well. I'm going to start from the top and work my way down, and I will introduce or invite Noortje and Georgia to say anything about universities that are that are more relevant to them. And please do put your questions in that Q&A as we go through. Is it possible to study dentistry at any university in the Netherlands? That is really, really easy to answer. Yes, if you speak Dutch. No, if you don't. Okay. It's not taught in English. And we do actually get quite a few Dutch students who need help to go to other countries because it's just as competitive to get in there. Are there any universities that provide English taught courses in medicine? Yes, two, Groningen and Maastricht. You can apply to one of them at a time. You can't apply to both of them at a time. But they do exist. They are really, really tough to get into. And it's important to point out that in the Netherlands, medicine is actually a 7-year process that is broken down into a 3-year bachelor's degree, a 3-year master's degree, and a 1-year residency. So it's 7 years, like it is in most European countries, to properly qualify. The 3-year bachelor can be done in English in 2 places. The 3-year master's cannot be done in English anywhere. To be perfectly blunt about it, the universities that are teaching in English in the Netherlands, they are looking for people who want to go on to work in Dutch healthcare. And if you don't, if you're planning to go there, study, and then leave again, they don't want you. Simple as that. So that is a really long one. I'm afraid I'm going to come back to that. Again, on medicine, would UCAT or no, nobody's going to care about UCAT or BMAT if you study in the Netherlands. They have their own tests, they have their own selection process that everybody has to go through. They won't care about that at all. How do you find out whether a course is selective or not, e.g. political sciences at UvA, University of Amsterdam? It should be clear from the website, but Amsterdam hasn't updated its website since last year. Amsterdam is the hardest one to get clarity from. I'll be completely honest about that, because every program there seems to have its own restrictions on what the entry is. But last time I checked on sociology, I didn't check on political science, it absolutely wasn't selective. So if it's not making any sign about the selection process that you have to go through, I would assume that it isn't. But I would also assume they're going to introduce it. So, and I would also say, University of Amsterdam, please update your website. Okay, this is an interesting question we get quite a bit. I saw the entry requirements of 3 A levels at CCC, but at the moment I'm in year 12 studying 2 A levels as well as 1 BTEC. How would that affect my application? Nortje, would it affect his application with you?
It depends on the courses that he's taking. If one of them is mathematics or finance, normally it would be fine if he doesn't apply for a program that has additional specific requirements like environmental science for chemistry, or so for us it could work out. But perfect match is of course the 3 A levels.
Exactly. And also 3 A levels are absolutely essential for the research universities. There is no way around that. You're not going to get in with 2 A levels and a BTEC. We do have this problem with BTECs. As a general rule, anything that isn't a level 3 extended diploma is not recognized at all. So if you're doing a BTEC that's equivalent to 3 A levels, you could probably apply to a University of Applied Science for something that is directly related to what your BTEC was in. If you're doing 2 A levels and a BTEC, you're fine for Universities of Applied Sciences. If you're doing 1 A level plus 2 BTECs, you're screwed. You're not getting in anywhere. What about university colleges? Is the timing the same as selective universities? No, it isn't, but they do have their own timelines. Some of them will use exactly the same deadlines because, well, that's what people are used to. But certainly in my experience, Utrecht, Leiden, Amsterdam tend to be earlier than places like Groningen. So they don't all use the same deadline. They are selective, but their selection process is not the same as numerus fixus. It's one of these things where, because they have a limited number of places, because they are usually residential, which means that accommodation is usually part of the deal if you go and study there. So there will be a selection process you have to go through, but don't assume it's all going to be happening at the same time. Are the UAS comparable to the former polytechnics here in the UK? I do and I don't like this question. The yes and no. They are equivalent to what the polytechnics probably were before they became universities, in the sense that they are industry facing, teaching practical skills. I would actually say, and I say this quite regularly, that when you're looking at the Dutch system, the research universities are roughly on the same level as our research universities. But I would say that I believe the University of Applied Sciences are better than their equivalents in the UK, simply because of the links they've maintained with industry. But I would also say, I would qualify that by saying that some of our former polytechnics in the UK are also very, very good indeed. But if you're asking me, is that the broad distinction? Certainly a Dutch person is going to tell you that way, yes, but it's not particularly helpful to look at it that way. As I pointed out, it's your subject that's going to decide where you go, nothing else really. As you mentioned, we need to look 9 months prior to our planned studying time. But do we have to pay for that 9 months of rent when we find a place? If we need to pay rent before we even move or start, no, you're not going to have to pay rent for 9 months without being there. Every student contract, if you arrange it through the university housing, you'll agree a place in hopefully May. It will be a contract that starts probably on the 1st of September, thereabouts, let's put it that way. You're not going to be paying for months in advance because there's a lot of turnover of student rooms. There will be people occupying those rooms until the summer that you want to move into. So, don't be put off by that, that's for sure. But that does bring us on to the next question, which maybe I can bring both of you in on. What are the term dates? How many months of studying per year? Nortje, what are your term dates?
Term dates as for payment or?
Semester dates, sorry, semester study.
Oh, we start from end of August until, let's say, end of December, early July, and then the second semester, January. Second semester starts halfway January until early July.
Okay, and as you can see from Nortje's momentary confusion there, terms are meaningless in the Netherlands. Semesters are what it's all about. Yeah. They don't have terms, they have semesters, 2 periods, equal periods of study. These are usually 20 weeks long, with the last few weeks dedicated to exams, I believe would be the accurate description. And as she pointed out, last week of August, this is phenomenally early by British standards. It's only a couple of weeks after A-level results come out. So you are going to be moving there earlier. You are going to be studying slightly longer than you would be in the UK in an academic year. You will also, as I pointed out earlier, be studying slightly harder. So if you think you're going to the Netherlands for a holiday, you are not. Georgia, do you have the same kind of semester dates as I've just outlined there? Do your exams fit into, well, your exams are different, aren't they? So presumably you have a slightly different pattern.
No, we start in October. So first intake now is October 2022, and then we have February. And then depending on whether or not you need to retake some of the courses because maybe you didn't pass your assignment, we can the second semester extends till July. But if you were passing everything from the first try, it's June.
Right. Okay. And that October start, Georgia, that's just because this is your first year, yeah? In the future, that will move a bit earlier, yeah?
Exactly. So then we will follow the traditional Dutch semester intake season, which is September. But for now, we're doing October because we needed that one more month for preparation and for the accommodation to be up and running.
Right. Okay. So you've got a little bit more time to get there. So that could be a great option for those of you when you get your A-level result. Well, this year, I reckon most people on this call are for 2023 and beyond. But if you are looking for 2022, there might be some last minute availability there. Let's see. Okay. I think we covered the cost for UK students. So I'm going to skip that one. I have a Dutch passport, however, I've lived in England for the past 15 years. Am I eligible for paying Dutch fees? Yes, you are. Literally, passport is the only thing that matters. Residency doesn't come into it. You will be entitled to Dutch fees. You'll be entitled to Dutch student finance as well. Okay, so yeah, that's a good deal, I would suggest. Is graphic design a selective subject? Yes and no. I mean, it's selection based on portfolio rather than numerous fixes. So there's no limit to the number of programs you can apply to, but they will be wanting to look at your work when assessing which level you are ready for. Specifically on graphic design degrees, most arts degrees in the Netherlands, or art degrees in the Netherlands are applied, well, they're all applied sciences. They're all 4 years long. If you think about that in the UK context, our degrees are usually 3 years long, but with a foundation year beforehand. So the foundation year is often actually seen as the first year of those 4-year degrees. So you might not need to be at the same standard as trying to get into the first year of a design degree in the UK, but you will have to have a body of work that they will pass judgment on. And there will be a limited number of places because obviously you can't just teach thousands of students who need studio space. So I think you'll be fine, but again, I'm not the person to judge your portfolio. Is it possible to study architecture in English? Yes, but only at places like Eindhoven University of Technology, so only in more scientific universities. Can you study architecture in English? If you've done maths and physics A-level, yeah. If you haven't, if you're more on the artistic side, it doesn't really work with Dutch architecture schools, let's be honest. Fashion courses taught in English, there are several. If by fashion you mean design, there's 2 in Amsterdam, 1 public, 1 private. That's Amphi and AFA, Amsterdam Fashion Academy and Amsterdam Fashion Institute. Willem de Koning Academy in Rotterdam does also teach fashion design in English. Oh, this is a good one. And maybe Noortje can have you back in on this one. If I choose to take a gap year, can they hold my place or should I apply the year after? How do you deal with that?
Normally, we don't secure places or hold places if students take a gap year. You just simply need to re-enroll or apply again for the next year, because since with us, at least, it's open program, so there's no need to save spots. If you meet the admission criteria, you will be allocated a spot, but you can only apply a year in advance of the year that you want to start. So if you apply now and decide to take a gap year, you will need to apply again when StudyLink reopens.
Okay. And I should just point out that the way that StudyLink works, if you are going into StudyLink now, before October this year, there's no way in the world you can apply for 2023. Any information you put in there will be wiped when the system goes down in October and resets for the following semester. So there's no way in the world you can start that application before October. And yeah, if you're asking, do Dutch universities like or hate gap years? They have absolutely no problem with gap years. It's just, why would you apply to university 2 years before you want to go there? It makes no sense. Presumably, the point of a gap year is for you to see a bit of the world and become a different person to a certain extent, and that might change where you want to apply. And also for the selective programs, you must compete against the students applying in that 1 year. And if you apply 1 year, but next year there are better candidates, you might not get a place. So, you know, you can't keep it held over. Is law taught in English as much as the other courses? No, but it is taught. It is taught in English to the best of my knowledge. And again, our A-Star Future and Study in Holland website will tell you this exactly. I believe there are 4 universities where you can do it. 3 of them are research universities, 1 University of Applied Sciences. All of them teach what's called international and European law, which is much more of a global law degree than a British one. So you're going to get a slightly different flavor than you would get. It's a very different flavor, sorry, than what you would get in the UK. But if you are wanting an international start in a legal career, these are great places to go, I would suggest. But yeah. Do we know the equivalents in Spain for VWO, HAVO, and MBO4? Not off the top of my head. I don't think I could answer that one, but I do know that I believe the Bachelorado is seen as always equivalent to the HAVO or MBO4, and sometimes equivalent to the VWO. So with the Bachelorado, I would say very high chance you're going to get into a University of Applied Science, some chance you're going to get into a research university, but I don't know exactly how that's going to work. Right. Now, this next question relates to people having part-time jobs while studying in Holland. I want to come to Georgia first on this one, because you are or were until very recently a student yourself. How did that work for you? And then maybe Noortje, I would like to get your institutional advice for people coming to the Netherlands.
Yeah, for me, it was an amazing opportunity because I always wanted to travel. So it was not something that I felt uncomfortable with. And the Netherlands is the best place to go to if you want to travel because of how international it is. I was amazed through the beginning of my studies of how many different ethnicities I got to get to know better and understand how many assumptions I have for so many different people and how many assumptions I have for what kind of problems we all deal with and how common we are at the end of the day. So it goes back to what I said, that we are also looking for international backgrounds team, because that way you develop yourself in a personal level and you're able to, I don't know, it's a bit challenging to communicate with everyone from so many different countries, but at the same time makes you so much smarter, and you have a lot of soft skills at the end of the day to work with. And we know that jobs right now, it's not only about the hard skills, but they're really looking for soft skills as well.
And also, I mean, particularly in your Harlem campus setup, you've got companies there that might hire the students anyway, haven't you? That's part of the philosophy behind the whole place, if I understood it correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And Noortje, what about you with Avans? What would you say to a student looking for a job in a city like Breda?
Well, I think the cities are quite geared to having, the students being part of society in all ways possible. So it's not a strange thing at all to be an international student looking for either a part-time job while you're still a student or pursuing your career afterwards. Within the program, there's different tools that you get to have a soft landing into the job market, given the fact that you do internships and you work for local companies, but also already, finding a job on the side. If you're open to it, the Dutch are quite easily adapting to people that don't speak Dutch. So don't worry about, waiting tables or working in a restaurant, in English. We're perfectly happy to have you, as part of the daily life, so to say.
Okay, all right. So that hopefully gives you a bit of an institutional and a student perspective. And the next question relates to, are art universities very hard to get into? Harder than they were, more competition than there was, but not impossible. I'm afraid I don't specifically know from Artes. I have more experience with Willem de Koning and with Academy Minerva up in Groningen. They have always been quite keen to look for students, so I don't specifically know the answer to that question. And obviously, I have no idea about the quality of your portfolio, so I can't tell you if your chances are good or bad. One A-level product design, one A-level French, and one BTEC business. I would like to apply for graphic design. Would that work? It would work. Yeah, you're fine. Okay, you're not screwed. Sorry, that's what you said. How hard is it to get into Maastricht? Are there a lot of people applying for hotel management? Again, this is a really, really specific question. I don't honestly know the answer to that one. I have visited the hotel school in management. I've stayed in the hotel that is part of it. They will want to limit the number of people they have, but you've got quite a few decent hotel schools in the whole of the Netherlands. I would reckon you would get in somewhere. And I don't think, look, it's not really about how good your grades are, is it really, with hotel management? It's much more about people skills and things like that. So I don't think you would struggle to get into a hotel management degree there. But specifically for Maastricht, I don't honestly know. Do you have any rankings for the applied sciences? Noortje, this is one for you.
Yeah, there's a national ranking for all the applied sciences universities in the Netherlands. And there's actually two. One is from Keuzegids, one is from Elsevier, and they rank the programs according to feedback from the students, the employers, the graduates, but of course also based on the course design, the facilities, and how competent the teaching staff is.
Right. Noortje, have you got those readily to hand? Could you just stick them in the chat for everybody while I'm going through some other questions? Brilliant. Thanks for that. Somebody's asking what bachelor's degree I did. I did economics and management at Leeds because I am, as you can probably tell, noticeably older than the other participants on this call. When I went to university, these options just didn't exist in English elsewhere in Europe. I did end up studying in Germany in German a few years later, but that's a very long story for another day. Do people find it hard with not visiting family frequently due to the long terms? Well, honestly, you're asking the wrong people on that one, I would suggest. I don't think so. I think, most people just get into the swing of it and are completely happy with it. You still have a really quite lengthy summer holiday. I would actually say, do people find it harder not visiting family frequently due to COVID? I think that was obviously a big deal. But, particularly there were a lot of restrictions in the Netherlands, much as there were in the UK. So that would have made things a little bit difficult. But I don't think, and particularly if you're from the UK, seriously, it's like, you're more, okay, train strikes, plane strikes, everything is an absolute nightmare when it comes to traveling at the moment. But I don't think you're going to really struggle with that. And I'm pretty sure your family's going to want to visit you if you decide to move to Amsterdam, Utrecht, or wherever. I was born in Spain and have a Spanish passport, but my mother is from Ireland. So could I apply for an Irish passport? Having a parent, oh gosh. And you're asking me whether the Irish passport would get you out of applying for an English proficiency. Honestly, if you need to ask the question, what's wrong with your English? Let's put it this way. If you speak good enough English, don't worry about it. Just do the test. Get an Irish passport anyway if you want to, but please don't get an Irish passport just to get you out of an English test because your English isn't good enough. That's hardly sensible, is it? So I understand why you're asking, but I also think there are reasons to apply for your Irish passport that just don't come into that. Okay, Georgia, if you're still there, I can't see you right now. Will Haarlem start to offer more courses in the future?
Yes, and also master degrees. So we will have sustainability, cybersecurity, AI, and liberal arts as part of our master degrees. And for bachelor degrees, we're trying to find a way that we can, because the students are going to have a lot of projects together. So we need industries that we can create multidisciplinary projects, that it makes sense for those industries to collaborate and innovate together. So yes, of course, we're looking to expand more and more. We're very curious and we're very excited for what is coming.
Great. And Georgia, can I just clarify, is the liberal arts a master's program or an undergraduate program that you're looking at introducing?
We're looking to introduce it as a master's program.
Okay, all right, that's okay. All right, that'll be interesting. Please clarify, when do applications open for 2023? Okay, 1st of October, unless StudyLink is doing some, complete site repairs or something like that. Occasionally it shuts down for the first week of October while they alter things, but 1st of October is pretty much the deadline or the starting date I would suggest for that. Georgia, is that also true for you with Dream Apply?
No, you can enter whenever you want, to be honest. What you mentioned before, we can save spots as well. So this is completely up to us. We are managing the platform ourselves. So we also code the platform as to what we wish it to do for us. So if you want to apply now for 2025, that is perfectly fine. If you need to apply a month or 2 months before the starting date, that's also fine. We're very flexible with applications.
Right. Okay. The next question is, okay, this is one we haven't covered at all, but it is a big deal for a lot of British applicants. What do you need to apply with apart from grades? Is there something similar to a personal statement or interviews? Again, this does depend a little bit per program. I'm going to talk a little bit about research universities, and then I'll ask Norcia to talk about her specific institution. But for research universities, quite often you will have to complete something that is called a motivation letter. Now, this is slightly different from a personal statement in the sense that it's more about you and where you want to go in life. How do you see your education helping you get to wherever it is you want to be, rather than I read this book that's related to this topic, which demonstrates my interest in blah, 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 which is more the way that a personal statement is constructed. I would say that generally speaking, personal statements are about all the things you've done in the past, whereas a motivation letter is about all the things you hope to do in the future and how your education is hopefully going to assist you in achieving those goals. Now, for most universities or research universities, you will absolutely need to do that. Okay. For some universities of applied sciences, you do, but not for all of them. Another important point on these, and this is different from the UK, when you submit to UCAS, part of your submission is that personal statement. This is not how it works in the Netherlands. You apply, and then the university will write to you if there are any additional requirements, like the selection process, like a motivation letter, like an interview or something like that. And if you do need to write a motivation letter, it will be specific to the university and the program that you are looking to apply to. So this restriction that you can only write one personal statement for every one of your UCAS applications just doesn't apply in the Netherlands. Now, Norcia, how does it work? You mentioned a little bit about interviews before, so.
Yeah, so for us, there is a part after we do a preliminary check of your eligibility where we invite you to take part in an interview with one of the lecturers in the program. And in this particular part, you will address a few of the online surveys you already have made as a preparation to this interview, looking into your strengths and your personal traits, and also your motivation is what you hope to achieve with the study program. So like we said in the presentation, it's not an entry exam or a test. It's not something that you can pass or fail, but it's really meant to give you a good recommendation whether or not this program is going to help you achieve what it is that you hope to achieve. So it's an informal chat with a lecturer where you do have to explain a little bit more about your motivation and what you would like to gain from it. But again, it's a mandatory part, so you'll have to take part in the interview to get your enrollment in the end. But it's not something that you can fail, so to say.
Right. Okay. And Georgia, do you interview your applicants at all?
Yes, sometimes. So for instance, as I said before, we're trying to be as international as possible. So sometimes we need to close the applications from a specific country if we have received too many. And then we become a bit more selective. So then so the first stage, so if we see that a lot of applications are coming from the same ethnicity, then we move them to interview, and then we become more selective till the numbers are complete, because we don't have that many seats. And also we're trying to be as international as possible. That's the only reason why we do interviews. And also for some small exemptions where the background is a little bit more diverse, and even though they don't have an English certificate, they had an English family, but they might not have had an English school. So those kind of exemptions we also review through an interview.
Okay, next question. Don't like these ones either. Are there any specific universities you would say are easier to get into? Universities or places? Yes, I mean, but that's the same in every country on the planet. I don't really want to get into the ins and outs of this because so much of it is subject specific as well. I would say if you were thinking of applying to Amsterdam, guess what? Nearly everybody else is too. So, you do need to, perhaps look at places beyond the cities you have heard of. That will improve your chances of getting in. There's no way, no point in denying that. The other thing is, of course, although there is a wide range of things taught in English, often you've only got 2 or 3 choices for the subjects you're interested in. So you might find it's only Erasmus, Utrecht and Groningen that offer the degree you're interested in. That's the same for everybody. So why not apply to all of them? It will just be the, luck of the, well, if there are no restrictions, you're going to get in anyway. Let's put it that way. So that's, does mean that it's not perhaps as big a deal as you think it is, but I would say that, Amsterdam is the one that is desperately keen to discourage applicants for some of their degrees right now. But again, that's not for everything, not for every subject. Are there particular universities recommended for studying journalism? Well, journalism comes up a lot. And first thing I'm going to say about journalism is so much of it is actually connected with being able to speak the language. What's the point of doing journalism in a country where you can't follow what's going on? That makes it a little bit difficult. So are there actual degrees called journalism in the Netherlands taught in English? Yes, at master's level in places like the University of Groningen. At bachelor's level, there is nothing. I would actually suggest that you might want to look at some of the more degrees like the creative media program, perhaps at Harlem Campus, where they're teaching you the kind of skills that would be needed to become a journalist. We have found, for example, students taking these kind of creative media programs have put together like documentaries as their kind of project and stuff like that. So they are learning journalism skills in terms of generation of content rather than sitting down and purely studying, theory of journalism or whatever. But it's very, very difficult to find those kind of degrees taught in English in European countries. They don't really exist. If I want to join in a second semester, can I apply in October 2023 or would I have to apply later? You're talking about second semester of the academic year 23-24. It would be later. You can't apply from October 2023. I think basically from around January, February. But this is kind of an academic question because not many public universities actually have programs that start in English in the second semester. Harlem Campus, however, does. So you could go and study there, I guess. But second semester, there's very, very little. 1 or 2 of the liberal arts colleges have a second semester intake, but I'm not really aware of any others. What are the chances of finding a job after graduation? Again, there's so much of this is dependent on you as an individual. I don't know, Nortje, if you could say anything about visas. I'm assuming this is from a non-EU national. What are the current rules and regulations about being able to stay in the Netherlands on that?
Because I think the question is a little bit twofold. On the one hand, it's talking about a student job, and on the other hand, it's talking about after graduation. Student job as a non-EU student is a bit difficult in the sense that an employer needs to apply for a working permit on your behalf, which is no rocket science, but it is an additional administrative step that they need to take. And when they're looking for staff simply for a student job that anyone can do when it's in restaurants or bars or whatever, they would give preference to a student for whom they don't have to apply for a working permit. After graduation, there is something that we call orientation year, and this means that you can extend your visa to stay in the Netherlands for 1 additional year while you look for a job in the field of your study. Again, once you have this orientation year, you have room to, dedicate your time to looking for this job, and then you have graduated, so you have the diploma, you have some experience. Probably if you study at an applied sciences university, you already have a little bit of a network when it comes to the organizations you did projects for or internships. So that might help you in landing a job, but it is something that is your own responsibility and can be a bit challenging in the sense that employers need to take an extra step if they want to employ a non-EU graduate or student.
Right. And now the final question that we have here relates specifically to the Technical University of Delft. There seem to be only 1 or 2 English-speaking courses there at bachelor level. Is that true? Yes, it is. There's one in aeronautical engineering, which has been hugely popular for a number of years, very selective, but very, very popular. I believe the other one is computing science, but there really are no more options than that. And I wouldn't expect them to be many more for a while yet. I don't think they'll be introducing more in the next few years, let's put it that way. But then nobody at the university has actually told me that. That's kind of my own assumption. So anyway, we have answered between us 49 questions. We've gone on a little bit longer than we thought we would. We still have quite a number of you with us, so I'm guessing that you found this rather useful. So, but I am now going to say farewell. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Nortje, for your input as well. And thank you, Georgia, for coming and sharing your institutional perspectives. It's been really useful. And I hope the students, everybody who's taken part, has found this very, very good. I will be making a recording of this available on YouTube just as soon as my internet connection allows me to download, process, and upload it. And I wish you all the best of luck with your applications to Dutch universities. If you want to know about other countries, hey, you can contact me anytime you want. We have got information about that. But yeah, the Netherlands is probably the most accessible choice for the largest number of people in Europe right now. So I'm going to invite my two co-hosts, if you like, to say a final word, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for joining. I put my email address in the chat, so if you have any specific advanced queries, feel free to reach out to me directly. But Mark is the expert on higher education in the Netherlands, so if it's non-Avans related, feel free to get in touch with him as well. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you make the right choice. Don't stress out about it. Try to see it in a very exciting way. You're picking your course and you're picking something that you can be passionate about and you can define yourself with. If you need anything from me, I have also put my email in the chat. You can also find my personal information from Mark. And Mark, thank you so much for hosting this. It has been great to reach out to so many potential students that they're just, overwhelmed with choices right now.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.